Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin with the Rep. And today, our guest is going to be Congressman Seth Moulton, and we're going to talk about the challenges facing the United States Postal Service. This is an issue that's become crucial for all of us. The Postal Service is a service. It's not a business. I know that there are people that say that government should run more like a business, but in some instances, like with the post office or the military or other things, we have a service we've got to provide to Americans. And the ultimate challenge, the ultimate job that we have is to certainly find the best way to do it. But you can't make these institutions inefficient because we rely on them. And so the topic of today's show is the U.S. Postal Service and the threats to it. We've seen what's happening. We've seen postal delays. We've seen a hearing in which the Postmaster General has testified as to why he got the job that he did, how he got it, and what happened when he got there. This isn't a political show, folks. I started Rapping with the Rep because my idea is to provide newsmakers to the people of Burlington, Bedford, and Wilmington so that you could make your own conclusions about what's going on in government in ways that affect you. But this show is going to sound a little more political because the crux of this problem is politics. The reason that we're in a problem is because we have one person, the president, who's looking for political advantage in an election. And the reason we know that is because he said so. And so I reach out to my conservative friends and moderate friends and liberal friends because all of us believe in democracy. We believe in the right to vote. We believe that the candidate who receives the most votes in an election, or perhaps through the Electoral College, is the candidate that deserves to take office. None of us believe in cheating. None of us believe in controlling the ways in which people can vote as a means of affecting the outcome. It's not a democratic principle or a Republican principle. It's an American principle. And so with that, I turn to Congressman Moulton to get his thoughts on the topic and to talk about what he and other members of Congress are doing in response to it. Again, welcome back to Rapping with the Rep, Congressman Moulton. I think with this appearance, I think this is your third or fourth time you've been with us, and I think you now hold the record for most appearances. In fact, you can turn in your card and get a free coffee.
Well, I'm proud of that, Ken, and I'll look forward to my free coffee. But thank you very much for having me back. It's great to be on with you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for being here. We've been talking about the issues involving the United States Post Office, which is an issue that when I started this show, I never thought would be controversial. I never thought we'd have a whole show to talk about that topic, but here we are. And I want to tell you, you've been upfront about these issues and how they affect our veterans, our seniors. And I wanted to also talk about how it's going to affect potentially our election. So talk about the problem as you see it in those ways.
Well, let's just level set here, first of all. The United States Postal Service is a service. It's a public service that's so fundamental it was written into our Constitution by our founding fathers. So we can talk about ways to make the Postal Service more efficient or to modernize it. Indeed, the Postal Service has been modernized a lot since the days of letter carriers on horseback, right?
Right.
But we cannot impact the fundamental mission of this public service, which is to deliver the mail. And that's what Republicans and the Trump administration are trying to do. They're trying to curtail delivering the mail because they think it will help Trump in the election. And if you think this is just a Democratic talking point, the president has said this very clearly. He does not want people to vote by mail, even while he and the First Lady are voting by mail. They requested their mail-in ballots last week.
That's such an important distinction and point that you make, Congressman, because I have a friend who wrote, he lives in North Carolina, he wrote to his senator, and he talked about the problem. He's a senior. And the response was to talk about problems that have existed in the post office. Well, the problem with his response is his president has refuted that as the reason for the changes that have been made. The reason is
Right.
the election, as you just said.
That's right. President Trump has explicitly said that if everybody votes in this election, he will lose, and that he does not want people voting by mail, even though he does so himself.
Right.
So, I mean, this is the most fundamental assault on democracy that perhaps we've seen yet. Because it's bad enough to ask a foreign power for help in your election. He asked Xi Jinping of China for help getting him reelected. He's taken the help of Russia. That's something that the founding fathers explicitly said we cannot let happen. But now he's attacking the very cornerstone of democracy, which is that everybody here at home gets one vote and that vote gets counted.
Right.
And he's telling people, you know what, if you can't go to the polls because of the pandemic, I don't want your vote. Your vote's not going to count. And that's why we as Democrats flew back to Washington last week on the weekend on Saturday to pass legislation through the House to help preserve the Postal Service.
You know, this issue, this whole show that I do, it's not a political show. I usually don't go to make even the statement I just made. This is an attack on Americans. This Postal Service attack, there are seniors, there are people in my district who want to vote for Trump, who will not be able to do that. It doesn't matter who you want to vote for. It matters that your opportunities to vote are being cut off.
That's right. That's right. And just to be clear, this claim the president makes that there is fraud with mail-in ballots is complete, well, I can't say the word, but it's just completely false.
Right.
Okay? They did a study recently on the amount of fraud in mail-in ballots, because we do have mail-in ballots in certain states. We have for a while in this country. And they found that the incidence of fraud is 0.00005%. Okay? Like, it is completely inconsequential. It is essentially nothing in an election. What the president is saying is that what happens if your if your ballot gets mailed to the wrong place? Well, then that doesn't count. It doesn't get counted, so it's not fraud. Okay? Fraud is if someone was able to actually steal your ballot, vote for someone different, and get it counted, and that can't happen.
It really could.
So it's crazy what the president is saying, and everybody out there listening today needs to know that there is no fraud with mail-in voting, so your vote is safe, and you need to know that Democrats like myself in Congress are doing everything we can with a few Republicans. There were a few Republicans who voted with us last Saturday to preserve this fundamental public service that is the Postal Service. Look, I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and I'm chairing this task force on the future of defense. And one of the things we're looking at is how can we make the Department of Defense more efficient so it takes less taxpayer dollars. But nobody is saying, hey, take less taxpayer dollars, but also give up national security. Break the fundamental mission of the Department of Defense, which is to keep us safe. But that's what the president's doing here, because he's saying the simple fundamental mission of the Postal Service, which is to deliver the mail, is not happening.
That's right.
And
that there is inefficiency is not the answer. It's just a further question, because you've got to operate it anyway.
The fundamental thing is you have to deliver the mail. It's that simple. Just like our Department of Defense has to protect us. Now, if they can be more efficient at protecting us, great. If they can be more efficient at delivering the mail, great. I support that. But when veterans are not getting their prescriptions because the mail is delayed, when sorting machines are being pulled out of Massachusetts just to make the mail take longer, when, as I reported on Facebook, we saw post office boxes, mailboxes, literally being picked off the street and hauled away in a dump truck, we've got a real problem. And it is a fundamental assault on democracy, and it's got to stop. I want to talk for just a second, Ken, because I know you represent a lot of veterans, about how important it is that veterans get prescriptions through the mail, because the VA, that's how the VA works. Right. And I know this because I made a commitment to go to the VA myself as a member of Congress, to continue going to the VA when I got elected. because I said, as long as my fellow vets are going to the VA and sometimes getting uneven care, I'm going to go there myself until we get this problem fixed. And so whenever I need a prescription, I get it through the mail, like all veterans. And, luckily I don't have any life-threatening conditions, but imagine all the veterans who do and who count on those prescriptions arriving on time in the mail to literally stay alive.
Right.
This is an assault by the president on all those veterans as well.
It is. We have this expression that we support our troops, but this is when you put it in play. This is more than just a talking point. And if you're interfering with our veterans' rights to get their medication, I mean, it just goes without saying how unacceptable that is. And I appreciate, Congressman, your fight to make sure that our veterans are respected and that we take care of them isn't the right word because they've taken care of us, but that we do our part to give to them what they've given to us. And you've given to us because you are a veteran.
No, thank you. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, and again, this shouldn't be political, right? Veterans have never been a political issue. Democrats and Republicans alike support veterans. But this attack on the Postal Service is an attack on veterans because we rely on the Postal Service to deliver our medications. And by the way, it's a great example of one way in which the VA actually is more efficient than, say, Medicare. That's a whole other healthcare policy discussion. But the VA is doing the right thing by enabling veterans like myself to get our prescriptions through the mail and not have to go to a pharmacy to get what we need. It also is more efficient. But the president's attacking it just in the name of trying to win an election.
And it's safer for veterans and for seniors to be able to get their prescriptions through the mail. They don't have to go to the pharmacy.
100% of VA prescriptions are through the mail, right? We all get our prescriptions through the mail. No one's ever said, oh, no, there's mail fraud. We can't get our prescriptions through the mail because there's mail fraud, right?
Right.
All right.
People pay their bills through the mail.
I mean, every one of us pays at least some bill through the mail. I pay a lot of bills online now. There's way more fraud online than there ever has been through the mail.
Right. And going back to what you said earlier, there's never been an instance in which someone has been elected and then after the election, it's been determined that they were there through voting fraud.
Literally never happened. Never happened.
You can point to an isolated incident where someone gets caught. They got caught. But the election wasn't turned as a result of a few votes of an isolated incident. It just doesn't happen in the manner that you said, to the degree that you said.
The only election fraud that goes on these days is when people are systematically disenfranchised from being able to vote. And this sadly does still happen in America. It's the same playbook that was used in the South before the Civil Rights Movement, where especially minorities, people of color, have their polling stations shut down. So they have to wait in long lines, and many of them get discouraged from voting. We saw massive lines at polling stations in elections earlier this year. Down in Georgia, where the Secretary of State was running for governor, he shut down a bunch of polling stations so that people in communities of color couldn't vote for Stacey Abrams, the Democratic candidate. So that's actual election fraud. That's election manipulation. What the president is doing right now is election fraud because he's preventing people from voting.
Intentionally so.
It doesn't happen through the mail.
Right. And,
let me just tell you, we held a great rally in Lynn, Ken, at the post office there, and it brought out the former mayor of Lynn and postmaster Tom Costa, 94 years old. And he came out there and stood on those steps at 94 years old and gave a rousing speech about how this is about the cornerstone of democracy. And, interestingly, my Republican opponent, who's a big Trump acolyte, came and started heckling us, heckling me, heckling this 94-year-old mayor, because we were standing there trying to protect democracy. So the assault on this is real, and it's from Trump and his acolytes. It's from, people like this guy right here in the district. And I'm one of the most bipartisan members of Congress. I'm proud to work with Republicans when we can get things done. but I'm not going to let anyone take away our democracy, our fundamental democratic rights.
Yeah, and you may be aware, but in the Massachusetts State House, we sent a letter signed by 140 or something, 130 of the 160 state representatives, bipartisan,
Mm-hmm.
to you, urging you to continue your work in representing us in fighting back against this.
Well, thank you. No, I'm proud of that, and proud to receive that, and you can trust that we'll keep up the fight. But this is also why there's so much at stake here in the Senate, because the bill that we passed through the House, with bipartisan support, mind you, there were a lot of Republicans who didn't find the political courage to vote for it, but there were some who did, and they deserve a lot of credit. That bill right now hasn't been taken up by Mitch McConnell's Senate because he refuses to act. He refuses to, as the Patriots unit know, do your job. Do your job, Mitch. Have a vote. You know what? If Mitch McConnell wants to vote against this bill because he just wants to politically support the president, then fine. But at least do your job and bring it up for a vote. Have a debate.
Can you talk about the bill, what it does?
Yeah, absolutely. So it says that the Postmaster General cannot make any more changes to the mail system, which he has promised to do. We make sure we reinforce that. But it also says you have to undo the changes you've already made, because mail is being delayed now. We had a constituent come into our office recently who hadn't received mail in 7 days. No mail in 7 days. Bills are going unpaid. She's getting hit with late fees, all because of the changes that have already been made. So this bill undoes those changes. It also provides more support for the postal office in terms of more funding, because we know that volumes of mail are up. And we know that the post office needs support to keep people on the job, to keep the sorting machines operating, so it can handle not only the influx of mail-in ballots that are coming. Remember, our election here in Massachusetts, our primary is Tuesday. But also, on top of that, just to handle all the things that people are doing through the mail right now because we're stuck at home.
Right, right. We're still in this pandemic. We're still in
We're
this
still in this pandemic, absolutely.
For that reason.
And it's all the more important to rely on. I mean, those of us at the VA actually felt lucky. We're like, well, thank goodness we don't have to go to a pharmacy to get medication and risk getting the virus because we're just getting it in the mail. But of course, now the president is attacking that and saying, no, veterans, you don't deserve to get your medications on time. They might get lost because sorting machines are getting taken out. I don't care. It's going to help me win the election. That's what Trump is saying.
And the point you're making is this isn't just any year or any election. This is a year in which we're in a pandemic. This is a year in which people should be encouraged with ways that they don't have to go out and be in close proximity to other people if it can be avoided. Here in Massachusetts and in other states, we've come up with that way. We expanded absentee voting or mail-in voting. It's really the same thing. And then to have the Postal Service say, not so fast. You can't really rely on us for this. And like you say, medication, bills, a birthday card to your grandmother, things like that, that we just count on as part of our everyday lives. The mail man or woman, the post person comes to our house, drops off the mail. It's happened since the day we were born. But suddenly, like you said, I've had no mail for 4 or 5 days, and then a ton of mail because I know it's backed up somewhere.
Now, one thing that people should know, Ken, is that if you get a mail-in ballot, you can drop it off at your election office. So if you feel safe and you can put a mask on, you can take your mail-in ballot, fill it out, and then rather than put it in the mail, you can also drop it off at your election office. So everyone should know that that is an option that you have. I'm actually going to do that today. Have you voted yet, Ken?
I have.
You have. You've already voted.
I voted for you, proudly.
Thank you. I'm proud of it.
And I did drop off my ballot. When after we've left this portion of the show, I'm going to talk to our voters about exactly where you can go to do that. But my concern is that other people in this Commonwealth live in a city or a place where it may not be as easy as it is in a town like ours. My concern also is that there are people who may not be able-bodied who can just get down to town hall and do what I was able to do. And so mail-in voting is still important to some segment of our population, even though I think you and I agree that the most efficient way to do it is bypass that and go right to town hall.
No, I just want people to know that it's a possibility. So if you do feel safe, you've already gotten your mail. So actually, I have gotten my mail-in ballot, and I'm going to vote today. I haven't voted yet. Ken, I will not be voting for you because that would be election fraud. I'm not in your district, even though you're in mine.
I appreciate that.
Although I would love to vote
could.
for you. I'm very proud of voting for you.
But Lori Ehrlich, I think, is congressperson.
But that's what I'm going to do today. So I got my mail-in ballot, and I could either put it in the mail or I could walk it down to the election office. In my case, my polling place is quite close. But people should know that those are options. But if you want to mail your ballot in, you should do so. You should do so. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that every one of those ballots gets received and counted. I mean, the good thing that everybody should know too is that because Democrats organized and called Congress back into session in Washington, and we voted on this legislation, we also hauled in the Postmaster General to testify before Congress, and he promised he wouldn't make any more changes. He promised he would not make any more changes through the end of November. Now, like I said, he's already made changes that we need to undo, so it's not like this problem is fixed. But it's not going to get worse, and people should know that too. That should give people some added confidence that our work standing up for democracy with the support of you and your colleagues in the state legislature has already paid some dividends. It's already paying off in terms of making sure the Postmaster General doesn't curtail mail service anymore for the next several months.
I want to comment on something I heard just this morning in the news, which was that the president has said that now his issue is with the local municipal officials in counting the ballots, because he believes that with mail-in ballots, it's somehow more difficult to keep track than it would be if someone shows up on election day and just votes. And it's absurd. It makes no sense, because all that happens is that our election officials collect the ballots, they go in a pile, they open them up prior to election day, and some of them count them on election day. It runs through a scanner. They don't actually physically count thousands of ballots. It goes through a scanner. That's the way it's always been. So before we had early voting, you had all these people on one day, and all the work happened one day with the same kind of a ballot.
That's right.
It's actually more efficient because they get a head start this way.
Remember when we've had some really tight elections and we've had to wait for absentee ballots to come in, even presidential elections before. You never heard a presidential candidate, Republican or Democrat, say, oh, we shouldn't count those absentee ballots because they're fraudulent.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Even you can go back to the year 2000 when the Supreme Court stepped in. At least those people that submitted those ballots in Florida, from their point of view, they voted. They had the opportunity to vote. There was a question that's a hanging chad. And so the issue was a candidate issue. Should we keep counting for the benefit of who's going to be the president?
Right.
This appears to be an issue that we may head into, which is, does someone get to vote at all? And that's something
right.
that the country's never faced before. Except for the suppression issues that you're talking about.
Except for the suppression issues. I mean, it's something that Black people, for example, in the South faced for decades when they were told they had to go to take a polling test or something that, of course, their white brethren were not subject to, and told, well, you failed the test, so you can't vote, which was just outright racism. There, of course, was sexism. This is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote. So for a long time in our country, the government said women can't vote. But we've learned a few things about our democracy. We've learned that this fundamental right to vote should apply to everyone. In fact, I've even voted to support extending that right to people who are a bit younger, lowering the voting age to 16, because so many young people right now, you see them on the streets, they're getting active in politics. I mean, a lot of young people know more about our elections and our candidates than some of our older citizens. So I think they should have the right to vote too. The point is that the history of America, the long history of America, has been a history of expanding the right to vote, of giving the right to vote to more people and stopping people who try to take it away. Well, we have that fight on our hands right now, where we've got to stop President Trump from trying to take away the right to vote from honorable Americans.
So as you said, you held a rally in Lynn, I think that was last week. What other plans do you have? You've been speaking out very loudly about this issue. Tell us what else you're doing or what you're thinking of doing with respect to this voting issue?
Well, we're going to continue organizing. I stand by at a moment's notice to go back down to Washington and vote on any more subsequent legislation. But one of the most important things we're doing is we're just keeping tabs on everything right here in the district. That's why this Facebook post that went viral of literally the post office taking mailboxes off the street in Gloucester has helped motivate and animate this movement. That we posted that online on Facebook. So many people liked and shared it that it got national attention, and it's brought more focus on this issue. So one thing I would say to everybody listening today is, if you have examples of the post office not delivering the mail or misdelivering the mail, basically failing in their duties because of these changes, let us know. Let us know, because we will share those. We'll make sure that everybody in Washington knows about them, and we're going to do everything we can to continue protecting our Postal Service and our election.
I really appreciate your hard work on this issue. It's a challenge, it's a threat to our democracy, really. And as I said before, I mean, many of my conservative friends are just as upset about this as many of my liberal moderate friends. It's an American issue. And it's at a time that we're facing a pandemic, at a time where we've got crisis after crisis, even in the South where we've got, the hurricanes. I mean, people are going to have expanded ways to get to the ballot box, and hopefully they all choose to do that because it's so important.
Absolutely. We're going to keep fighting for our American values, our fundamental democratic values. And Ken, I'm proud to do it by your side with you every day. You do a fantastic job of representing your district, and I'm proud to have your support.
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate it, as you do too in this district. So thank you. Thank you for stopping by again at Rapping with the Rep, and thank you for all your hard work.
All right, thank you, Ken. Have a good day. Take care.
So that was Congressman Seth Moulton talking about his views of the challenges that have been presented to the U.S. Postal Service, actually the threat of interference with the U.S. Postal Service, not only in delivering the mail every day, the vital mail to us every day, but also the reason for it, which, as we've discussed, is, according to our president, because it could create an advantage to him as in an election. Folks, and I reach out to many of my conservative friends who have said they agree with me on this issue, my moderate friends, my liberal friends. I mean, we're talking about the fundamental principles of access to the ballot. And I know of no one that really believes that we should be interfering with people's right to vote. It's one of the most fundamental rights that we have, and the most fundamental principles that we know here living in America, that we the people control the government. And the way that we the people control the government is that we run for an office, as I did a few years ago in becoming your state representative, and others choose to do. And then when we run for office, the important role in our democracy is that of the voters, because it's actually the voters that choose us. We may choose to run, to put, they say, our hat in the ring, but that's not how we get elected. How we get elected is that a sufficient number of people are convinced that we're the person who could do the better job for them. We're the person whose values and views are most consistent with theirs. And that's pretty fundamental. We don't run for office in a way that we look at the mechanism of voting and try to have an effect on that. So folks, I want to talk to you about our local plans for voting in the upcoming election. Now, early voting ends right now. It's August 27th, and some of you are watching after the fact. So early voting was the week before the September 1st primary, which currently we're still in. If you have not been able to early vote and have not submitted your absentee ballot yet, then most likely your option is to vote in person using a mask. You'll be socially distanced on September 1st. Now, in the traditional places. So let's talk about the November election. In the November election, we've expanded absentee voting. We did expand absentee voting so that anybody can request a ballot. You'll be getting a postcard from the Secretary of State. If you fill out and return it, it will get to your town clerk here in this area, and you'll get an absentee ballot. With that absentee ballot, you have two choices. You can put it in the mail, or you can go to your local voting authority, which in the case of our towns, Bedford, Burlington, and Wilmington, means you can go to town hall, where there's a box, a locked box, where you can place your vote, and therefore bypass the post office at that step altogether. You'll need the post office to get you that ballot, but to vote, you can just drop it off, which is what I did a couple of weeks ago in Bedford, where it became so popular that I was told that the box in Bedford is attached to the side of the main entrance of the building. And normally when they get something dropped off, a bill or something like that, it goes into a small box in the interior wall. Well, drop off voting dropped in that box during this primary election became so popular that what happened at town hall was they expanded, they increased the size of the interior of that box. So you won't see the outside looking any different, but inside the box became bigger, which is great news really when you think about it. Certainly that means that in November it will be used even more, and maybe it'll become the size of a desk. I'm just joking. But that's a great option for local people. Now I realize that not everyone has the opportunity to get to town hall and do that. You still may need the mail, and that's still an option for you. And there are some people who want to vote in person and see a person actually collect the ballot. Now, I will tell you, with early voting, the ballot looks the same, and the envelope you put your ballot in looks the same, and it's collected by the same people. And if you vote either dropping off your ballot or by mail, you can go online to the Secretary of State's office and track your ballot and make sure it got there, which I did, just confirm that they got there. So you can do all of that. Now, I say that to my district, but you know that I'm a state representative. I do represent this district in Beacon Hill, but we also look out for the Commonwealth as a whole on several matters. And so I understand that in some cities, it's not as simple as that. And I'm encouraged to see that in some cities, the municipality has put out several boxes in the community that are being collected daily or maybe multiple times a day by the town, so that these ballots can safely get back to the municipal election authority. In our case, that's the town clerk, but in some cities, it's a different office. That's good. But that's why this continues to be a problem here in Massachusetts, is that there are places where it is more difficult to get access to, in that case, a city hall or something like that. So folks, make a plan, please, to vote either on the election, which is coming up on September 1st, or the election the election that's coming up on November 3rd. This is a crucial election. There is so much at stake. And we've been discussing the attack on the post office, but it's not out of character. There's so much that's been going on the federal level, and all of these issues are on the ballot on November 3rd. So I hope that you'll go and vote. I hope you all have the opportunity to go and vote, and I will protect your opportunity to vote no matter who you vote for in this election, because that's America. That's democracy. That's the Constitution. It's how we grew up. It's the value that we learned in growing up, and it's a value that I think is still in the hearts of the people here in Bedford, Burlington, and Wilmington, across the Commonwealth and across the country. Folks, this is Representative Ken Gordon. You've been here with Rapping with the Rep. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon. I hope you're all safe and healthy. Thank you.